Yeah, so I'm here with Kai, and I found out fairly recently that she has been writing children's books, which I thought was really cool. And I wanted to know kind of how she got into it, why she got into it, what the thought processes are when she's writing. Yeah, kind of like I thought maybe it would also be inspiring to people who had thought about doing something like that as well, and haven't made the first step yet. So, Kai, first of all, how long have you been writing these books?
Well, I've been publishing children's books since 2014, so quite a while now, but I've been writing before that, obviously, because there are a lot of texts who never got published, and I hope it stays that way. Because I just wrote stories. I've been writing pretty much all my life, which is a really cliche sentence to say, but still, I think most people who like writing, they start really early.
Yeah.
And that's what I did too. And then when I was like 12 or 13, I got one of the stories published in a story collection, and that really motivated me. And also at the same time, my mother started publishing children's books, and that also showed me that it was possible, because it seems really, really difficult in the beginning, and it is difficult, but it's at least possible. So I never stopped writing, and then 2013 I won a prize for one of the stories, and that was basically the beginning of the whole publishing process.
Aha, yeah, exactly. Yeah. So what book do you have, that particular one here?
Actually, I don't have it here. I don't know. I don't think I have it here because it got published really early.
Yeah.
So it's kind of old now in the world of books.
Yeah.
They get old really quickly because so many books are published every year.
What was that particular one about that we won
actually,
the prize for?
it's about a boy with a mom who writes children's books. Yeah, you know, I think
you
it's
got to write about what you know, right?
Yes, exactly. So I wrote about this boy, and he just wants to do things with his mom and stuff, and she is really into her story. It's a story about animals, and then there's a problem in the story, and he wants to go to the zoo with her, and she's like, no, I have to figure out something, a solution for the problem, and then they find a solution, and then she creates a new problem, and so on and so on and so on. And basically he has to remind her, hey mom, I'm still here. Yeah. And maybe we should just go to the zoo and talk about things in real life. But obviously they also find a solution for the book in the end. Nice. Yeah. So I guess it was about something I knew. Yeah, even though my mom never got that intensely dragged into her stories. She was always still there for us, but it was kind of something I knew still. Okay.
And actually going to your mum, like when she's also a published writer.
Yes, she has published around 60 books for children. Yep, I love her books. They're so great. She has a really funny way of writing, and still very she has a lot of empathy for children, because she's a teacher as well, as am I, also in elementary school, like me. So she really knows how kids nowadays are thinking and what they like, and she knows what words are able to reach them. So that's why I really like her books, and I've always liked them, and I think they were really inspiring me to also write.
I guess she kind of read them to you when you were a little kid, I guess.
Not really, because she started publishing when I was already a teenager. But she read tons of books, obviously, to me and my brother. So it was just really inspiring to see that she had good ideas, and then she also had the ability to write them down in a way to really reach kids in the right age, because when you write a children's book, it's really important that all like comes together.
Yeah.
The words have to work with the story, and the story has to work with the characters, and the problem has to be big enough for the kids but not too big. So it's a lot of factors that have to come together for a good children's book, and she really has a talent in that way. So I started trying it too, and she's really taught me a lot. And nowadays I teach it as well.
Oh, you teach writing?
In January of this year, I started to run a kind of writers club. I've been going there to like read out of my stories and stuff and talk about books and writing for like 10 years now. And the lady who has been running it stopped. And so I decided to take over, basically.
I imagine it's kind of difficult to get published at the beginning. So how long were you writing? Like from the moment you started writing to the moment you got published? Like how long was that, and how did that happen? Was it? I guess it was something to do with the prize.
It had to do with the prize, yes. I wrote a story. Like I wrote the story about the boy with the mom who wrote children's books. And it was the first story I actually finished, because it's one thing to start a story, but it's really another thing to end it as well, because it's just difficult. So I finished the story, and then obviously I had my mom read it, and I really wanted to hear, oh my God, this is the best story I've ever heard. And obviously she told me, oh yeah, it's a nice story. Maybe you should work on it a little bit and shorten it a little bit, and maybe not have the boy eat spaghetti so often, because obviously he's going to eat lunch every day, but you don't have to say it every day. She told me to just work on the story a little bit more, and I really didn't want to hear it. So I did what most people probably do when they want to publish a story. I just printed it all out, and then I sent it to like 15 different publishers for children's books. And obviously that way didn't work, because the story was just not all the way done. Because it's not enough to just finish it. You also have to go over it afterwards and make it a little better and shorten it, which is actually really important. So nothing happened other than I waited for answers and I didn't get them. And then like 2 or 3 years later, I looked at the story again and I read it, and I was like, I kind of know now where she was coming from, because that boy is eating spaghetti every day. And
so you wrote about the spaghetti like too much?
Well, it wasn't spaghetti always, but you know, one of typical mistakes when you write, probably also for adults, is that you just mention things that are not important for the story. So obviously somebody who wakes up in the morning, obviously he's going to brush his teeth and have breakfast. But if it's not important for the story, you can also just cut it out and jump to the time during his day where it actually gets exciting. And that was what I didn't do when I wrote that story first, which it's not that bad, because you can do it afterwards. You know, you can just take all the lunch breaks out, and that's what I did then, because after the few years I kind of had shaped, I guess, in my head, and I could see the parts that were not important, so I took them out, and that book actually got the prize, because then it was ready. But before then it was not ready. And
so your mum was kind of like,
she was completely right. She was completely right. But I was not ready to do it, because I really wanted to get the book published now, and I was
I know that feeling.
I was so impatient. But nowadays I know that it's really important to go over your stories and just make them better afterwards. Obviously, you have to write a first draft before you can write a second one. So it's fine to write one and it's not perfect, or it's not that great or something, because you can make it better afterwards. It's a process. But if you don't do that, then it's always going to be a first draft. And obviously a first draft is not going to be published.
Yeah.
So I didn't make that mistake anymore.
Yeah.
So I got that prize. It's called the Dixie Kinderliteratur Prize. And at the event where I got that prize, there were also people from publishers. And afterwards they talked to me and they were interested in publishing that book and in publishing other stories. And then I kind of got my foot into the door.
Yeah.
And obviously that made it a lot easier. Mm-hmm. Because if you know people, it's
sure.
just, yeah, that's the most difficult thing about it, to actually get your foot into the door.
Yeah.
And get to know people.
So would you suggest kind of the first draft just being a stream of consciousness and then you kind of worry about tidying it up afterwards? Or like, what kind of process works for you? Do you just kind of like blurt it all out and then tidy it up later, or how does that work?
Well, I guess it's a mixture.
Yeah.
Because blurting out is good in the beginning when you have an idea, and then just the inspiration is there and you just sit down and write and write and write. But that inspiration ends somewhere, and then usually the story is not done, because that's where it becomes work. Because then you have a problem in the book and you have to solve it somehow, but you don't know how. Because usually, or I feel like, if you start writing a story and you already know the problem and also the solution, your readers will probably know the solution as well. So it's not going to be a big surprise. So just because you know a solution does not mean you should take it.
Yeah.
You should probably find like 5 other ones and then take the 6th one, because that's going to be it's going to be a surprise. Yeah. And it's going to be rewarding for the reader, because it's just not the thing that they have expected anyway. So I think it's a good idea to just write when you have an idea, but eventually you should probably think about how to go on with the story, because otherwise you just write and then you start a different chapter the next day, and then the next day you feel like, oh, actually it would be fun to write the end now. Yeah. But it doesn't work that way, because all the figures or the characters, they have to kind of move throughout the story, and they have to also develop.
Yeah.
And so you can't just write a little bit there and a little bit there and a little bit there, unless you really know a lot about the story beforehand. Yeah. Then it probably works for some writers. So you need to know at least a little bit where you're going, because otherwise I think you're just writing so to get warm.
Yeah.
But that's not what your readers want to read in the end.
Yeah.
They want to read the thing that you really want to tell. And as long as you don't really know what you're talking about or you want to tell, there's not going to be a story. There's just going to be scenes, but probably not a story that comes together.
Yeah. So
I think it's important to think about what you want to tell if you're telling a story.
Yeah.
After blurring everything out.
Okay. So where do the characters come from? You have them in your head already, or you wait for the inspiration, or you create them from scratch? How does that work?
I have another quote for you if you want to hear it.
Go on.
Jack London said, "You can't wait for inspiration, you have to go after it with a club."
Yeah.
And that's actually how it is, because inspiration sometimes it just comes, but usually it comes when I can't write. Especially now that I'm a mom, I can't just sit down and write just because I have a good idea now. So also when I have a due date and I have to turn in a story to my publishers, I can't wait for the inspiration. I just have to sit down. I mean, it's just work, basically. It's fun work a lot of the times, but parts of it are just hard work. So some of the characters are in my head already, because I don't know, they just come somewhere. I have this one. It's about a little dragon who is really, really active, and his mom is kind of suffering, and his teacher is kind of suffering, and also he's suffering because he feels like he's not really right, and everyone is just complaining about how he is behaving. And I guess he just came from kids I got to know during my job as a teacher, because eventually you just come around kids who are really active, and if you talk to them or if you talk to their parents, you just notice, or I noticed that that sometimes they just have some problems because of their activeness, even though it's not a bad thing. Just the schools ask them to adapt all the time, and sometimes you can't adapt anymore. So Supper he just popped into my head basically, and he's probably made out of all these kids I got to meet.
He's like a hyperactive dragon.
Yeah, basically, yeah. Yeah, basically. I mean, obviously in the book the word hyperactive is not mentioned.
No.
No, it's not. It's not, but it's also not necessary, because when I do like readings to school classes or groups of kids, I like to read out of this book because it's a little, like I can move a little bit and stuff.
Yeah.
And usually there is at least one kid in 20 kids or something, who's just sitting there all the time like this, and he just can't sit.
Yeah.
And usually it's the one kid who is right next to the teacher.
Yeah.
And in the end, sometimes that child raises his hand and says, "Oh yeah, that dragon, he's just like me."
Yeah.
Yeah.
Ah, yeah.
And that's
relatable.
really nice. Yeah, it's really nice, because this is not a book about a dragon having to adapt to everything. It's a book about a dragon being this dragon, just like he is, and his parents and teacher kind of helping him to still be happy. Yeah, so this is one of my favorite figures, I feel, because he's just, I just love him so much.
Yeah.
But sometimes I just, especially when it's like a detective story or something, like this one, or like a little crime novel for kids, I just try out a few characters, or just take the first one that pops into my head and then look if I can work with it. Usually it's kids who have their own little problems as well, like kids' problems, like they are annoyed by their siblings, or they're scared of sleeping at a friend's place or something. It depends on which age the story is for, but I try to not have kids who do everything right and are always happy, because that's just not reality. And I want the kids to kind of read the story and feel understood.
Yeah.
And being able to relate to the characters. Yeah. And this one, there's a little story about a flying fox in here. This one.
Oh, cool.
And this one I wrote because one of my best friends works at the zoo, and she takes care of the flying foxes. And at the time I wrote this story, she was taking care, or basically raising, a flying fox that was not, he was not accepted by his mom anymore. So she was walking around town for like 6 months with a flying fox in a bag here.
Ah, really?
Yeah.
Oh,
also
wow.
Also in the subway. We were on the subway, and then all of a sudden a little. It's not a paw. It's, what did they have? Like a.
Yeah, like a claw or something.
Yeah, came out here, and it was really. It just looked like she had a dinosaur baby here.
Oh, wow.
So I decided to write a story about a flying fox.
That's cool.
And that's what I did.
This is the most recent one.
It was, yes, the most recent one.
Yeah.
And it was so hard to write, even though it's such a short story. It's one of the ones that helps children to learn how to read, because it has little pictures there, and it's supposed to be read to the kids, and then they say what animals are these, or what's seen on the pictures. And I was thinking, oh yeah, it's such a short story. it's probably going to be easy, but it's really not about that, because when you write for children, sometimes the short stories are more difficult because all the words have to be correct because you don't have so many words.
That's why.
Yeah.
Yes.
Also, when you write picture books, it's really difficult. Sometimes I hear, oh yeah, it must be really easy to write children's books because they're so short.
Yeah.
But no, it's just as difficult as writing for adults, because you still have to find the right words and find the right characters, and it still has to be suspenseful and humorous and exciting and everything.
It's like writing a haiku.
Basically, yes,
Yeah.
yes. It's not easier just because it's short.
Yeah.
So I'm proud of this one because it really didn't want to be written.
Yeah.
But then it was. But I think the one that I like most is this one.
Zappo.
Yeah, because I've had so many good reactions from the kids themselves.
So what would you say is your biggest motivation for writing? I think I'm kind of like going in more the sense of the esoteric sense, like what do you get out of it?
Let me think about that. I feel like kids need stories, because stories and books can take you to different places, and sometimes being a child is not easy. So the more difficult it is, the daily life, maybe you've got family problems or school problems or friend problems, just issues, the more important it is, the more important it is to find stories to take you away for a little bit. So I guess I just want to give kids something to think about something else. Because in a book, there's always problems and issues and everything. The main character has to do something which he doesn't like, or it's just problems. But the reader doesn't have to find the solution, you know? He can just watch while he's reading and imagine everything, but he doesn't actually have to work for it because the author is working for him.
Yeah.
So I just I want to give kids a good time. I mean, obviously, there's also some kind of moral or something in my books, but it's not, I don't write the book because I want to teach kids something. I just want to entertain kids because I think it's really important to be entertained these days. And I think that books are really powerful in that way.
Yeah. Okay, fair enough.
Yeah.
And what would you say to somebody who's thinking about writing, or like what advice would you give to them to get started? So like maybe somebody who's doing another job and has this in the back of their mind, and they're too afraid to make that first step. What would you say to them?
I think it depends. It depends on if they want to publish the story, because if they just write the story for themselves, then it's important to just start and write the story because it's for themselves. And then also there's not a right way or a wrong way. If they want to get the book published by a publisher and not pay for it, which is important, then I think it's most important to read a lot of children's books, because it's important to know a lot about it, and also it's not enough to only know one kid. I mean, some people just write for their own children, which is fine, but if you want to reach a lot of children, you gotta get to know a lot of children. And sometimes it's enough to get to know a lot of children in books, because they're also they could also be real. I guess it's also important to see it as a process, because obviously if you, start to do painting or something, obviously you're going to paint a lot before you have an exhibition or something. So it's the same thing with writing. You just have to try it out and learn a lot about it. It's a kind of craft as well.
Yeah, you got to get good.
Yeah, you gotta get good, exactly.
Yeah.
I mean, it's also nice if you have a talent for words, obviously, and fantasy, and you can imagine a lot.
Yeah.
But if you don't learn anything about the craft of writing, then eventually you're gonna have a problem, probably.
Yeah.
But it's not that difficult to learn it. Some things are just, you read it and then it's like, I see, it's actually that way, and then you just do it a different way.
And what about somebody who has been writing as a hobbyist and wants to take it to the next level and actually get published?
There's also a lot of help online how to do it, because I mean, you can go my way and just not go over your story and just be frustrated about it, but you can also go, like, take a shortcut and actually learn how to do it right, because the thing is, there are a lot of publishers and they have the very certain programs. So some of them only publish picture books, for example. So if you write a book for teenagers and you send it there, obviously they're not going to publish it because they're a picture book publisher.
Send it to the right place.
Yeah, send it to the right place, and really also get to know your target group, because you can't write for teenagers and first graders and toddlers at the same time. It doesn't work. Yeah. So that's probably, and then also you just have to, I think, move on. It's probably not going to work with the first story, but it's really
that's good. Yeah, because I know that from music.
Yeah.
You cling on to that first thing.
Yeah.
You can't cling on.
You just have to move on, and maybe one day even that story is going to be published, but maybe not. Maybe it was just important to have the first one so you can write the second one and then the third one, because as I said about drafts, you have to write the first draft. You can't start with the fifth one. So even if it's frustrating that you haven't gotten an answer, or it's really difficult and you don't really know what's missing in the story, but it doesn't work out yet, just start another one. I mean, not 20 other ones. It's important to also finish something eventually. But if it keeps you from writing, then maybe it's good to just move on and try something else.
Yeah, cool. Hey, thanks, Kai. Really, really nice talking to you, and thanks for introducing us to your books. And
Thank you as well.
I wish you a lot of luck. And to any viewers out there who have kids that speak German, that's probably a good place to start reading with them.
Thanks.
Yeah. Thank you.
You're welcome.